Well, good afternoon, guys, on this wonderful Memorial Day, May 27th. And I am in Skull Valley because I want to make a video on the salt desert scrub, the low elevation habitat in the Great Basin and other parts of the inner Mountain West that is dominated by species that are highly adapted to salt and alkali soils. It's a very, very harsh habitat to grow in, so it's led to a lot of very specialized species being found here, so let's get right into the video. I chose Skull Valley to make this video and because it's just the closest area to Salt Lake City I could find. And unfortunately there's a distressingly high number of invasive species I can see here. I was not expecting so many. Main ones appear to be this plant firstly. This is, I believe, Lepidium perfoliatum, a plant native to just sort of central Eurasia-ish kind of area. So member of the cabbage family. We also have, among the invasives, a really distressingly high number of Bromus tectorum. I knew I'd see some of that on the way here, but I was not expecting there to be so much. Actually, on the harsh alkali soil we got here. If you look out into the mountains, there's a mosquito park. Gosh, there are so many bugs. You have to get moving. All that brown you see on the mountain is, without a doubt, Bromus tectorum. It's the worst invasive species in the West, I swear. So I have this guy, which is definitely quite adapted to the habitat here, and I was definitely expecting to find. This plant is Halogeton glomeratus. Another plant native to Eurasia was brought here, I think accidentally. Some were brought on purpose, but this one I'm pretty sure was an accident because it's quite toxic to livestock. It's actually one of the rare toxic members of the family Amaranthaceae. And finally, the other one is this dead plant right here. This is Ceratocephala testiculata. It's a member of the family Ranunculaceae, which is a bit interesting. Again, I'm pretty sure it's from Central Asia. I have to look again, but yeah, most of the invasive plants around Utah you'll learn are from Central Asia if you study them enough. It's quite thick right here, as you can see. 4 horsemen of the terrible invasive species you can find here. There's a few native species though, thankfully. And the dominant one we find right at this spot is this guy, this shrub, Sarcobatus vermiculatus, commonly known as Greasewood. It's one of the most hardiest salt-tolerant plants you can find out here. And you see it, all of those shrubs out there, almost all of them at least, are a member of this species. And it's a pretty interesting plant because it's a member of a family Sarcobataceae, which only has one other species, which I'm not sure what it is, or even where it's found. Wow, is my focus not working? Dang, hold on. Now looking at where we came from, you can see we're in a bit of a low point, even before we're already flat, low down Skull Valley. As a result, water is more likely to accumulate here, as well as dissolve salts. So there's even less species now because it's a harsher environment. We still have some of the Sarcobatus vermiculatus in the background there, but most of what we see on the ground here is different species. Aral occidentalis, member of the family Amaranthaceae. It's a close relative of the genus Salicornia, which is much more common around the world. Aral only has 3 species, one of which is in North America, the one we see here, as well as 2 in South America, like in Argentina, which has some similar habitat to this down there. And you can tell it apart from Salicornia generally, at least the ones around here, because it has alternate branches, while Salicornia has opposite branches. But otherwise, yeah, we're both like green stem succulents. Oh, this one's also always a perennial, while some species of Salicornia, like Salicornia rubra, are annuals, but there's also Salicornia utahensis, sometimes called Sarcoconia utahensis by more traditional authors, which is a perennial. But yeah, really cool plant, very hardy, and very, very well adapted to the habitat out here. It's great seeing that there's no more invasives right now. We only have these native plants, but the biodiversity is admittedly lower, but that's not the biggest problem. Not every habitat has to be super biodiverse. Very neat. It's not too hot right now, but again, it gets absolutely scorching in the summer. The soil right now is a little bit damp because it has rained recently, and that's sort of what you expect around this time of year. Springtime and maybe winters when you expect it to actually be a little bit damp. But yeah, it's just so harsh here. You can even see the salt like precipitating out of the ground. Not precipitating on the ground, but it definitely accumulates on the surface visibly. There you go, your proof that it's a little wet. There's definitely a trade-off in this salt desert scrub. whereby the lower down you get into these harsher, saltier, alkali soils, the more water will be available. So if you can actually handle the salt, it is not such a bad place to grow. I mean, this place could practically be considered a wetland. I should be clear, the actual very valley bottom we're in right now, I guess like this, is commonly called a playa, which is a somewhat different habitat, and some will be totally barren. Some will have a few species like this. Some may have permanent lakes in them, or fairly frequent, like very seasonal, but rather perennial lakes, as I should say, because they come back every season, like Severe Lake, which can sometimes completely fill up. And it'd be great if that could be designated a national wildlife refuge. That's a little bit tricky in this state. Let's carry on anyways. Oh, is that it's kind of cool. You can see a red, gotta be Aral still. You can really see that Aral is a woody shrub, just with this green succulent branches that if they grow long enough, actually start to develop woody tissue like this. Wandering out into the heart of this Skull Valley playa, it's getting increasingly wet. You can see there is no more greasewood to be found here, and like soil with some pretty nice footprints on it. I'm gonna start sinking to the ground if I go any further, but I kind of want to keep going out that direction. Even the Aral seems to be struggling. Look at that. Sure must have seen better days. Out that direction somewhere is the Great Salt Lake, which is starting to recover a little bit, thankfully. It seems like it's going to be, it had a good year for precipitation, and I don't think snowmelt has really entered full swing yet. Well, it's late May. It must be going pretty hard right now, so let's see how much the Great Salt Lake will fill up, and let's hope we have at least a average year for the 2024-2025 runoff season. Whoa, okay. This is wet. I'm gonna go back now. Oh, dry land, I love you. Man, I am super thankful I got this wind-resistant microphone. And there's no mosquitoes here. Actually, I want to see if this works. I want to see if I can unplug this and get you guys an idea of how windy it is out here really quick. Right here right now, it's pretty freaking, oh yeah, definitely. I'll plug my microphone back in really quick. It's super windy out here right now, which is expected. This is a low, wide, flat valley we're in. So the wind can just blow through with nothing to obstruct it, except I guess some mountains on the other side out there. This ground is actually, even though we're just talking about how wet the playa ground was, it's actually quite dry here, and I can walk on it fairly easily, which is nice, because I want to go see what's on that sandhill over there. I'm getting a little annoyed because I don't think I'm going to be finding all the cool salt brush plants I want to find aside from the Sarcobatus vermiculatus. So some of the others I want to find were hopefully like gray espinosa, some tetrademia species, Oreocarya albida, the white flower rabbit brush. What else was I going to find? Atriplex convertifolia and Atriplex canescens, respectively. Shad scale and four-winged salt brush. Really cool plants that are well adapted to the salt brush, but also habitats a little higher up. And I don't know, there's a couple of cool species you can find out here. But man, this place is really barren. I don't know why. I mean, aside from the fact that's a playa, but I don't understand why that area back there is less barren than right here. So let's carry on. I guess this time is as good as any to talk about the formation of the salt desert scrub. What's important to know out here is that the salt desert scrub is a natural consequence of the topography of the Great Basin. And by Great Basin, I mean specifically the hydrogeographic region and its climate. Throughout the Great Basin, evapotranspiration is higher than precipitation. That might seem a bit odd. Like, how can more water evaporate from that which falls here? Basically, what that means is that the forces that cause evaporations are strong enough to evaporate all the water and then some. So any runoff can also evaporate. And even after all of that evaporation, there's still potentially more evaporation that could occur if more water were to fall. So water does not really accumulate here, except in a few select places like the Great Salt Lake, which gets enough water from the runoff from the Wasatch to sustain a proper lake. So because water does not pile up here, all the basins are endorheic. Now, of course, many rivers and dry places eventually reach the sea, but we don't here because water can't pile up to over the broad basin and basically overflow the surrounding ridges that contain the Great Basin, I guess. I'm not explaining this so well, but like imagine Lake Bonneville. That was during a wetter time with less evapotranspiration, and at times it actually did overflow and flow into Idaho, into the Snake River, and out to the sea. That doesn't happen here anymore because it's just too hot and dry. And as a result of that, any sediment and dissolved salts that are eroded from the mountains into the basins here accumulate and accumulate and accumulate over time, creating a soil with a lot high salt concentration. It can be very highly alkaline. It requires specialization from its plant species. This habitat can be found in other parts of the world, like in southern South America, where water often doesn't reach the sea, as well as Central Asia. You got some pretty broad areas of what would be a very good analog to salt desert scrub growing throughout there, with many related species. Also the family Amaranthaceae commonly. Amaranthaceae is really, as I said before, really dominates all the native species you'll find out here, but I digress. And you of course find some parts of Africa, like definitely Sahara, but also like interior of southern Africa, like the Kalahari Desert, as well as in Australia, like the Lake Eyre Basin. You can have probably a good chance of finding some analog habitats that we have here. One of the most interesting things you can find in the salt desert scrub is a high level of zonation. So as you go from like the proper shrublands dominated by sagebrush and rabbitbrush, slowly down into the Ceratocephala at the very bottom of the valley, you notice many species start to slowly drop out as the soil gets saltier and some start to be found. So sagebrush, the rabbit brushes will all go away and start to be replaced with shad scale and four-winged saltbush, eventually be replaced by the greasewood, and then eventually the Alalmrophia occidentalis, which we're starting to find again right here, thankfully. I'm glad to see you guys. So yeah, an interesting habitat that can only really exist in very dry parts of the world. It's like, I mean, there are salt marshes which are kind of similar here and have even a few similar species like the Salicornia. It's had a really weird noise. We've also, it's like a salt marsh that's in the very interior of deserts, and it's so odd because it's just such a harsh environment. Despite, I guess it kind of makes sense. It's not exactly the playa, which really is a bit idiosyncratic in that it's the wettest habitat in the Great Basin despite being the lowest down, and one of the harshest despite having the most water. This is all good in focus. Now we're back on high ground. We're not really seeing any of the species I was kind of hoping to, just more of the same. There is thankfully a lot less invasives out here. You just see some Halogeton, a couple of cheats I pulled, but not much else. So you see the Sarcobatus vermiculatus is starting to bloom. That's a little cool. I really saw what it looks like before when doing that. There's not a whole lot, except for maybe this plant could be a native one. Looks like it might be, don't quote me on this, Suaeda nigra, the Mojave Sea-Blite. I remember Amaranthaceae, of course, but yeah, I don't know. If someone who's more knowledgeable than me who watches my channel, let me know, because I'm kind of interested to know what it is. But yeah, not a whole lot of plants here that I haven't already seen. Let's carry on. Oh. These inflorescences are kind of colorful. Well, and as soon as I say that, I find another native plant. This one, definitely a species of Cryptantha or Oreocarya, most likely Oreocarya humilis. Don't quote me on that, it's just the most common one you're going to find around here. It looks a lot like it. It's a bit hard to tell what exactly it is if its flower's already dead, but yeah, another good native, member of the family Boraginaceae. That's going to be prickly as anything in about a month's time. Like those really fluffy hairs you see on it right now are going to be super prickly by then, just like the Amsynchias. Alright, let's carry on for real now. I really like this pattern of cracks I'm seeing on the ground. So not really cracks that much. I mean, they kind of are. But I like to see the wet earth with the dry salt covering in between. Very cool. I don't want this video to be a total bust, but I'm certainly having a hard time finding all these other plants I wanted to find. I do know a salt scrub area where I can find some, but I can't go to it today, unfortunately. Let's see what we can find up there. Hopefully there's something else. Well, unfortunately I didn't find anything on that hill either that we haven't seen yet, but I do seem to be getting more and more into the domain of the Alalmrophia occidentalis, which is kind of cool. These plants are seeming especially tall. Let's keep moving on. Check out that big patch over there. Maybe I can call it a day. Or at least tentatively call it. I'll try and explore some other parts of the salt desert scrub and see if I can find these other plants I was looking for. But if not, I mean, well, I was going to revisit it eventually anyways, some other day. There's too much variation in this habitat. Like if you're in the Mojave Desert or the Wyoming Basin, you're going to find different plants. So it's definitely worth revisiting in my opinion. Let's see, that looks kind of, there you go. Those are pretty good looking ones. Might be worth making a video on right now. Nice. Well, here's a tentative cutoff date for our cutoff time for the video. So, thanks for watching, and see you next time. Now, this is a bit interesting, and I really think it's interesting because I'm risking getting mosquito bit. In fact, not risking. I am getting mosquito bit right now to show you this. But look at all this cryptogrammatic soil that's growing everywhere. It's really quite thick. I didn't know it could be found in the salt scrub brush, whatever you call it. And definitely seems to be suppressing a lot of the invasive weeds. I mean, there's a lot less cheatgrass here. There's some, but a lot less. Awesome. Bicycle's coming. Yeah. All right, see you now.